It is a bit ridiculous that apparently the CIS didn't score a single major victory. Read that again, preserved exactly as it was written, typos and all. Because someone typed that out in frustration, probably at 2 in the morning, probably after watching another Clone Wars breakdown where the Separatists get stomped into the mud for the 100th time. And they were right. Here's what nobody wants to tell you. The Clone Wars lasted 3 years. 3 years of warfare across 10,000 star systems. Military forces numbering in the hundreds of billions. Resources sufficient to bankrupt entire sectors. And we're supposed to believe the Confederacy of Independent Systems, an actual peer-level galactic power, achieved nothing? Won nothing? Spent 3 years getting humiliated by Jedi and clones while their generals twirled their metaphorical mustaches? The math doesn't work. You know it doesn't work. You've known it this whole time. What if I told you the CIS didn't just score victories? They scored victories so decisive, so embarrassing to Republic command, that the winners literally rewrote history to bury them. That quote at the top? That's not ignorance. That's the result of deliberate suppression. The archive was made incomplete on purpose. Let me show you 3 battles they erased. 7 weeks after Geonosis. That's how long the Republic got to feel confident. 7 weeks. Then came Hyporei. Republic Strategic Command received intelligence, and I'm using that word loosely, indicating the Confederacy was building a droid foundry on some outer rim rock called Hyporei. Underground manufacturing facilities, potential threat, standard stuff. They authorized a strike force to destroy it before full production capacity kicked in. 20,000 clone troopers. Multiple legions combined into one hammer meant to flatten a factory. And the Jedi. Council member Ki-Adi-Mundi, Knights Shakti, Aayla Secura, Kakruk, Tarsir, Sha'agi, plus others whose names got conveniently lost when records started disappearing. The intelligence was fabricated, every word of it. The whole operation was a separatist trap designed to do 2 things: inflict maximum casualties and introduce the Confederacy's new supreme commander to the galaxy. Not through propaganda, through body count. The Republic fleet dropped out of hyperspace into prepared kill zones. Separatist naval forces had been hiding behind Hyporei's moons, waiting. They engaged before Republic ships could even establish defensive formations. Transport vessels carrying the bulk of clone infantry? Incinerated in orbit. Those clones never touched the ground. They died in the black, confused, asking their commanding officers what was happening while their ships came apart around them. Surviving transports crash-landed across a debris-strewn hellscape. Of 20,000 clone troopers, fewer than 4,000 survived the landing in any condition to fight. Fewer than 4,000. Before ground combat even started. And then Grievous came for the Jedi. The survivors had gathered in a crashed acclimator's hull, best cover they could find. Defensive positioning. Smart, given their situation. Grievous led approximately 100,000 B-1 battle droids, supported by B-2 super battle droids and droidicas. He didn't just direct the assault from some command post. He penetrated the Republic perimeter personally. 4 arms. 4 lightsabers, taken from Jedi he'd already killed elsewhere. And he moved through those defenders like they were training dummies. Sha'agi died within minutes of close combat. Tarsir followed. Kakruk fell to wounds so catastrophic he was presumed dead. They only found out later he'd somehow survived. The remaining Jedi, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Shakti, Aayla Secura, got pushed into a desperate holding action, lightsabers barely fast enough to deflect Grievous's attacks. When an ARC trooper extraction team finally arrived, guided by a distress beacon that almost failed to transmit, they found wreckage. Total clone casualties exceeded 95%. 3 Jedi confirmed dead. Multiple others critically wounded. The droid foundry, the supposed target, remained completely operational. It kept producing military hardware for months afterward. 95% casualties. 3 dead Jedi. Failed every single objective. Extracted survivors under fire from a battlefield they never controlled for 1 second. That's not a setback. That's annihilation. But here's how the official histories remember Hyporei. The engagement where General Grievous debuted. Debuted? Like he walked a runway. Like this was a premiere event where audiences got introduced to an exciting new character, rather than a massacre where the Republic lost an entire task force. The framing transforms defeat into introduction. Military disaster becomes narrative setup. 4,000 dead clones turn into background extras for a character study. The dead Jedi become origin story casualties. Interesting because they died fighting someone important, not interesting because the Separatists won. The victory itself? It disappears behind Grievous's costume. You know the Battle of Chrisphsus, Kenobi and Skywalker, urban warfare in a crystal city, droids marching through glittering streets. Classic imagery. Great episodes. But ask yourself, why were Kenobi and Skywalker sent there? Standard histories start the Chrisphsus campaign with their arrival, as if the battle began when the heroes showed up. This is a lie by omission. When those two Jedi generals dropped out of hyperspace, they weren't starting anything. They were trying to reverse a defeat that had already happened. Chrisphsus mattered. Crystalline world with significant manufacturing capacity, sitting right on major hyperspace routes. The Republic kept it garrisoned, 18,000 clone troopers under local command, tasked with planetary defense. Standard stuff. Routine posting. The Separatist invasion started in the Clone Wars' third month. First came a naval blockade. Cut the planet off from Republic supply lines completely. Then ground forces arrived. Droid armies numbering over 200,000 units, supported by armor and artillery. 200,000 against 18,000. Already ugly odds. But it got worse. Clone Sergeant Slick was a spy, embedded in the Republic command structure. He'd fed the Separatists everything: defensive positions, patrol schedules, supply depot locations, communication protocols. Every ambush the Republic planned became a counter-ambush. Every reinforced position got hit with precision strikes before reinforcements could arrive. The clones weren't just outgunned. They were playing a game where their opponent already knew their moves. Casualty figures from this initial phase? Classified or destroyed. What we can reconstruct suggests losses exceeding 60% of the original garrison. 60%. Dead or combat ineffective before the famous heroes ever showed up. Survivors retreated to defensible positions in Chrisphsus's capital. Shrinking perimeter. Continuous droid assault. Grievous coordinating from orbit. Systematic reduction of Republic-held territory. By the time Republic Strategic Command bothered authorizing a relief operation, Separatist forces controlled over 80% of the planet's surface, including the primary crystal processing facilities, the whole reason Chrisphsus mattered in the first place. 80% control. 200,000 droids occupying a strategic world. Intelligence assets compromised. Clone garrison decimated. That's a conquest. That's a win. The relief operation, the thing historians call the Battle of Chrisphsus, required 2 Jedi generals, multiple clone legions redeployed from other theaters, and orbital support that only became possible after breaking the Separatist blockade. The campaign lasted additional weeks, thousands more casualties before they finally dislodged Separatist control. All of that happened because the Separatists won first. The difficulty of liberation testifies to how complete the conquest was. But the initial victory, the actual Separatist triumph, it gets treated as background, a situation that existed rather than something that was achieved. Setup for Republic heroism. Context for Anakin and Obi-Wan looking determined. They didn't want you asking why those heroes needed to be there. The answer was too embarrassing. Everyone knows the liberation of Ryloth. Skywalker sacrificing his flagship to break the blockade. Kenobi advancing through hostile territory while protecting civilians used as living shields. Windu's assault on the capital city of Lesu. Spectacular stuff, extensively documented, studied in tactical courses, remembered because it was memorable. The conquest? The thing that made liberation necessary in the first place? That's a footnote. an implied prerequisite, acknowledged only far enough to explain why the heroes had a job to do. Ryloth fell in the Clone Wars' 4th month. The invasion fleet, commanded by Emir Wat Tambor of the Techno-Union, arrived with overwhelming force. Over 400 warships, troop transports carrying 800,000 battle droids. 800,000. The Ryloth garrison consisted of 12,000 clone troopers, plus whatever local defense forces the Twi'leks could scrape together. They were outmatched before anyone fired a shot. Tambor's strategy combined orbital bombardment with rapid deployment. Twi'lek settlements outside major population centers got targeted first. Destruction serving military and psychological purposes. Refugee columns fleeing towards cities carried terror ahead of the advancing armies. The planetary government tried negotiating. Tambor rejected everything that didn't include unconditional surrender and transfer of Ryloth's industrial assets to Techno-Union control. The capital fell in 6 standard days. 6 days. That's how long a planet held against proper Separatist invasion. Remaining Republic forces retreated to the equatorial mountains, joined resistance cells under leaders like Cham Syndulla, and tried to stay alive. But they couldn't contest control of the cities, couldn't touch the resources, couldn't threaten orbital space. Ryloth belonged to the Confederacy. The occupation lasted 3 standard months. 3 months where Wat Tambor systematically extracted everything valuable: real spice, industrial capacity, conscripted labor. The civilian population starved, while food supplies got redirected to occupation forces or exported for separatist profit. Population centers were fortified against the counterattack Tambor knew would come eventually. Anti-aircraft emplacements positioned among residential structures to deter orbital bombardment. The Separatists didn't just hold Ryloth, they administered it, built infrastructure for extended occupation, treated it as their territory because it was their territory. And the liberation campaign that eventually reversed this? 3 Jedi generals, multiple clone legions, significant naval assets, several weeks of sustained combat producing thousands of casualties. That's how hard it was to undo what the Separatists achieved. But the history? The history frames Ryloth exclusively through liberation. Separatist victory becomes setup. 3 months of occupation compress into background narration. 800,000 droids that conquered an entire world become obstacles to be overcome, not instruments of victory. The conquest happened. The conquest worked. The conquest got erased. And then there's Jabiim. This one's different. The documentation is too extensive to simply delete. Too many people involved. Too many records survived. Standard histories acknowledge Republic difficulties on Jabiim. They have to. But watch the framing. Watch how defeat transforms into noble sacrifice. How retreat becomes difficult choice. How abandonment becomes impossible circumstances. Jabiim sits in the outer rim, persistent acidic rainfall, unstable terrain, mud that swallows everything. When local nationalist forces under Alto Stratus aligned with the Confederacy in 21 BBY, the Republic committed heavily to preserve a loyal government. 37,000 clone troopers, armor and artillery optimized for harsh conditions, a Jedi contingent, including General Kenobi, Commander Skywalker, and over 20 additional knights and Padawans. Expected duration, weeks. Actual duration, 43 days, ending in evacuation under fire. Jabiim's conditions neutralized every Republic advantage. The constant rain degraded communications and limited aerial recon. The acidic atmosphere corroded vehicle armor and weapons. The unstable ground swallowed walkers and made defensive fortifications temporary. Stratus's Jabiim nationalists, supplemented by droid battalions, knew this terrain. They exploited it ruthlessly. Clone units accustomed to coordinated tactics found themselves fighting blind. The mud consumed their dead. General Kenobi was reported killed during an assault on Separatist positions. He'd actually survived, captured, but they didn't know that until later. His presumed death devastated morale. The Jedi contingent suffered losses averaging 1 knight or Padawan every 2 days. Commander Skywalker, suddenly in charge, led increasingly desperate defensive actions, perimeter contracting, options disappearing. After 43 days, Strategic Command authorized withdrawal. Surviving forces, fewer than half the original deployment, evacuated to orbiting transports while Separatist forces pressed their advantage. The Jabiim loyalists who had supported Republic intervention, abandoned, left behind for Separatist occupation and retaliation. Stratus's nationalists executed thousands of collaborators in the following weeks. Over 37,000 troops deployed. Retreat. Over a dozen Jedi killed or missing. A general captured. A loyal population sacrificed. The Separatists achieved every military objective. They destroyed a Republic army, killed Republic commanders, claimed a strategic world. That's a triumph. By any definition used for Republic victories, Jabiim was a Separatist triumph. But it gets remembered as tragedy, noble sacrifice, heroic struggle against adverse conditions. The Padawan pack who fought and died together. Skywalker's desperate command. Clones holding the line while transports loaded. Those stories are true. They're also incomplete. They're told to avoid telling the story of Separatist victory. So how does this happen? How do you erase battles involving billions of soldiers and thousands of worlds? You control the archives. When Chancellor Palpatine declared the Galactic Empire in 19 BBY, he inherited the Republic's entire information infrastructure, including the Jedi Temple archives, the most comprehensive historical repository in known space. Within days of Order 66, Imperial forces secured those archives. The Jedi librarians who'd maintained records for 1,000 generations, executed as traitors. Their replacements answered to Compnor, the Commission for the Preservation of the New Order. Compnor's mandate included historical reclamation, which meant systematic review and revision of existing records to align with Imperial ideology. Clone Wars documentation got special attention. The conflict that created the Empire needed to be remembered correctly, which meant Republic good, Separatists evil. Republic victories inevitable. Separatist success impossible. Here's the thing. They didn't just destroy documents. Destruction leaves gaps. Gaps get noticed. Instead, documents were edited, recontextualized, supplemented with interpretive frameworks that changed meaning without changing text. A battle report documenting Separatist victory could survive physically while being annotated as engagement prior to Republic counteroffensive, filed alongside records of subsequent Republic operations, indexed under Republic campaign names. The victory remains technically documented while becoming practically invisible. Military personnel who remember differently faced institutional pressure. Clone troopers, aging at twice the normal rate, died naturally within 2 decades of the war's end. Couldn't sustain alternative oral histories. Officers who contradicted official narratives found their careers truncated, their records flagged, their testimony classified. The Separatist archives themselves? Seized, classified, destroyed. The CIS Council's records went up in flames on Mustafar, alongside the Council itself. Separatist military command files were captured when the droid armies received shutdown codes. Individual Separatist worlds found their governmental records impounded as evidence of treason. The Confederacy's perspective on its own operations ceased to exist as an accessible alternative narrative. This wasn't careless record-keeping. This was policy. So here's where we land. You noticed something didn't add up. You watched breakdown after breakdown, showing the CIS getting humiliated. And some part of your brain kept asking, how did a 3-year war produce 0 enemy victories? How did a conflict this massive have only one competent side? It didn't. The competence got edited out. Hyporei, 20,000 clones deployed, 95% casualties, 3 dead Jedi, complete mission failure. Victory erased, reframed as character introduction for Grievous. Chrisphsus, 18,000 clone garrison, 60% losses, 80% of planet conquered. Victory erased, reframed as the situation before the real heroes arrived. Ryloth, 12,000 defenders overwhelmed by 800,000 droids. Capital fallen in 6 days. 3 months of occupation. Victory erased, reframed as background for the liberation story. Jabiim, 37,000 troops, 43 days, retreat under fire, loyal population abandoned, over a dozen Jedi dead or missing. Victory acknowledged, but transformed. Reframed as noble tragedy instead of enemy triumph. The archive was made incomplete deliberately. The winners wrote history, and they wrote it to make themselves look inevitable. You weren't wrong to feel frustrated. You weren't wrong to notice the pattern. The CIS didn't just lose. The losing was manufactured after the fact. Now you know what they didn't want you to know. Subscribe for more stories like this.